All right, so today we're diving into something more than just a story. We're really doing an autopsy on a psychological collapse. We're stepping onto a stage that's set deep in a primeval forest, and this place, well, it becomes a crucible for one man's entire reality. This is all about what happens when an institution's pride smacks head-on into a world that just refuses to be tamed. So, let's get into it. This quote just nails the tragic arrogance at the heart of this whole thing. You see the setup here, right? These inquisitors, they are absolutely convinced they're right, that their beliefs are this impenetrable fortress. But the reality? It's way more humbling. They're not conquerors at all. They're just travelers, and they're lugging around this incredible weight of their own certainty, this heavy stone house, through a world that is ancient, wild, and frankly, could not care less about their laws. And that mindset is exactly what we're going to tackle in our first section, focusing on this knight, Brother Anselm. We're calling it the architecture of pride, because their whole worldview is this structure, see? It's meticulously built to keep the messiness and the sheer unpredictability of life out. Okay, look at this. This slide lays out the whole conflict perfectly. On the left, you've got the Inquisition's world. It's all about dusty old parchment, this rigid pride, and the idea that nature is just chaos that needs to be beaten into submission. But on the right, you have the forest's truth, a place with superhuman vitality, its own kind of primal geometry. It's a living, breathing thing. And these two realities, they're about to collide. Hard. So let's be super clear about what we mean by this architecture of pride. This is more than just being arrogant. It's a kind of psychological armor that's been forged from institutional certainty. You know, the belief that if you just follow the rules and do your duty, you'll be safe from the messy, terrifying chaos of just being alive. This is the bedrock of their whole identity, but as we're about to see, it's also the source of their incredible blindness. And here's where things really kick off. In this story, the forest isn't just passive scenery. Oh no, it becomes an active player. It starts to gaze back, and it acts as a mirror that forces this really unwelcome, really terrifying self-reflection, especially for our guy, Brother Anselm. The weapon the forest uses here is its own pulse, its own life force. The text calls it an uncanny mirror. It doesn't attack Anselm with tooth and claw. No, it's much more devastating than that. It attacks him with his own suppressed truths, all the doubts, all the fears he's buried under his uniform and his vows. They're suddenly staring him right in the face. And this reflection, it leads to the first massive crack in his reality, what's called the logic of zero. It's that shattering moment when you realize your title, your rank, your authority, everything your job has given you means absolutely nothing. Against the deep, rhythmic, honest sound of the universe, his status as a holy knight is reduced to, well, zero. So now we're zooming right in, entirely on Brother Anselm's internal state. As his authority out in the world just evaporates, his inner world starts to completely fall apart. The very tools he's always trusted, his faith, his reason, his laws, they become the very instruments of his own torment. Now, this is the crucial psychological twist. That dusty parchment, the physical symbol of his law, stops being a source of strength. It becomes a gilded cage. Sure, it keeps him safe, but it also traps him. It stops him from facing the terrifying, beautiful truth of existence. He's made a choice. He's chosen to preserve his role in society over paying the price of being truly awake. You can literally watch his collapse happen in stages. First, his so-called spark of reason, the main tool in his kit, is completely useless against the wild, irrational logic of the forest, this verdant absurdity. Then, the shadows in the trees start to look like his own inner darkness, a confession he just can't hold in anymore. And finally, the gut punch. He realizes that what he always thought was a golden chain of honor was actually just an institutional leash. This whole thing brings up a question that goes way beyond this story, doesn't it? What do you do? What happens when the very framework that gave your life meaning, the map you followed without a single question, suddenly turns out to be wrong? That's the cliff's edge where Brother Anselm is standing right now. Just as Anselm hits absolute rock bottom, something new enters the scene. But it's not a savior, not in any way you'd recognize. It's the arrival of a figure who represents a completely new philosophy, a terrifying new gospel that doesn't offer comfort, but a really stark challenge. We're asked to just forget the meek Christ on the cross. The figure who shows up is the Uccini Christ, a hero king. This is not a martyr.
This is a warrior who went down into the underworld, literally wrestled with old gods, and came back sovereign, powerful, with eyes of cold fire. He is the living, breathing shadow of the Overman. And this sets up the ultimate philosophical battle. On the one hand, you've got what Brother Anselm stands for, the spirit of gravity. His beliefs are like this heavy anchor, leaden and certain, holding him to the way things have always been. And on the other hand, you have the spirit of becoming, embodied by the Essene Christ. He's not anchored to anything. He embraces the void, and he represents this relentless, dynamic yes to all of existence, the good, the bad, all of it. So this is the radical new idea that's presented to Anselm, sovereignty based on the void. It suggests that true power isn't handed to you by an institution or written down on some piece of parchment. It's something you earn through the terrifying courage to face nothingness, to accept there are no pre-made values, and then to create your own from scratch. For a man who's lived his entire life by someone else's rules, that is the ultimate challenge.
So how does this all end? With their whole worldview shattered and facing this terrifying new ideal, what's the final verdict for the Inquisitors?
The judgment isn't coming from the outside. There's no divine wrath. Instead, their own pride, that architecture of pride, it literally becomes the fuel for their own destruction. They find themselves being consumed by this purposeless fire, an internal hellmouth that they built themselves, brick by brick, with their own certainty and their own arrogance.
The biggest takeaway from this entire parable is this. Meaning isn't something you find. It isn't given to you. It's not written down for you to follow. True sovereignty, true freedom is forged. It's the result of having the terrifying, painful courage to look right into the abyss of your own being, let the old you burn away, and remake yourself from the ashes.
And that leaves us with the final, haunting question. The old certainties are gone. We're all walking that fragile rope over the abyss between who we are and who we could become. So what's the choice? Is it the relentless, chaotic affirmation of existence? Or is it the mechanical condemnation that comes from clinging to a rulebook that just doesn't apply anymore? The choice, now, is ours to make.